and welcome to a new video. Today I'm here to do my top 5 best books of the year. So again, as in the last video, sorry about my voice. It's been a while since I've heard myself in my usual normal voice. I've missed it. I miss it. But I'm recovering. So if this is painful for you to really listen, I'm very sorry. But I've been much worse. Like, you would not believe how bad I was on Christmas morning. That being said, let's go into my top 5 books of this year. What I do have are 5 books I've read, most of them during the summer or in the beginning of the year, but my favorite book of the year, it was one of the most recent ones I've read. That being said, this is in no... I mean, there's a small order of things, meaning my first one I'm gonna mention is kind of a honorable mention, and the last book I'm gonna mention is my favorite book of the year, but in the middle, they are just my, this is my top 5, but I wouldn't call it exactly like my 4th or my 3rd or my 2nd favorite book of the year. Let's just say that I'm gonna start with my honorable mention, I'm gonna end with my number 1 favorite book of the year. And what would be my honorable mention this year, you wonder? Well, I might remind you that during the booktubeathon this year, which I completed, and I read 7 books, and you can check out my wrap-up in a video, I will link it here. I read a Jane Austen novel, yes, during the booktubeathon. I read the shortest novel, I think, which is Northanger Abbey, and of course I'm gonna mention it here as my number 5 in my top 5, as my kind of honorable mention. Like, I couldn't not mention how amazing her writing is. Even in terms of her novels, this is like the first one she started but then went back to it and then never actually published it during her lifetime, but it was like her first try, and it's her most youthful and optimistic, but also very sarcastic, very savvy, very opinionated, just funny and imaginative and incredible. Jane Austen is a genius, and I'm gonna fight everyone that says otherwise. Her writing is beautiful and smart and amazing. And so, of course, I would have to mention this book. Northanger Abbey is a story of Catherine Morland. She's one of the many daughters and sons of her parents, and she goes with some friends of the family to Bath. And in Bath, she meets some new friends that take her to Northanger Abbey, their home, where imagination runs a little bit wild because of all the gothic novels she's been reading. And yeah, like, craziness ensues. I adore Jane Austen, and this book is really cute and good, and I loved watching the adaptation as well with Gigi Fields and Felicity Jones, so I would highly recommend watching that if you haven't yet. And so yeah, I would suggest reading Northanger Abbey and Jane Austen. Now going into the middle layers, one of my favorite books of last year was a Portuguese book. This doesn't happen very often, and it's not even fiction. So this is not a fiction book, this is some chronicles written by a Portuguese comedian that I read this year, at the beginning of the year. It's Ricardo Luz Pereira's Reacionário com dois Cs. I've mentioned this book a lot in this channel, which is surprising because if you're not Portuguese, you don't know what the hell I'm talking about. Hopefully, if you're Brazilian, you do know, but it's not like you're familiar with him the same way we Portuguese people are. That being said, he writes very funny chronicles in a newspaper, and this is like a compilation of some of them. He's really funny, he's really insightful, really smart, which is what I appreciate the most. And this is a very interesting, very funny book about, you know, the peculiarities and the funny things about life and the world and the Portuguese people. So that's that. And I really enjoyed reading this, and I bought his newest book as well, and I'm planning on reading it in the beginning of the new year. So now we're going to my top 3. And one of them that I'm gonna mention now is the final book to a series. Now, I've read the 2 last books of this series this year, so I could mention both of them, but I'm just gonna mention the last one because I think it's an amazing conclusion to a series. I was intrigued, I was glued to the page, and I really loved how everything came around and everything was concluded, and I also cried a little tear in the end, and that is Rick Riordan's The Blood of Olympus, the last book in the Heroes of Olympus series. I've grown so fond of these characters. I love them to bits. Percy and Annabeth are my fave, but I also really love Leo and, you know, all of them. The funny thing is, I thought I wouldn't read more of his books. I thought, you know, I've read these 2 series, they are pretty long. I can always revisit them, but I mean, I will move on from other books now. And at the end of this, Apollo shows up. And now all I want is to read the Trials of Apollo series. And this is ridiculous. Like, why does he do this to us? I can't buy any more books, Rick. We're gonna have to start a library just for your books, man. This was an amazing conclusion. Very smart, very well done. Also gets a spot on this top because the depiction of Évora, a Portuguese city, in Alentejo, which is a southern region, was very well done, and I really enjoyed reading his perspective on one of our cities, and it was really lovely to read about that. And also it was a very well done conclusion, so go read Rick Riordan, a diverse cast of characters with an interesting story. It's a middle grade series, and I'm 23 and I enjoyed it, and a lot of people older than me love it, because it doesn't matter if it's middle grade or YA or adult. This is enjoyable and well done and well written and well thought out, and it's a fantasy series that everyone will enjoy. And I'm so sorry that the movies are trash, because this would be lovely to watch on screen, but I don't trust anyone now to do this books and world justice, so I'm just gonna read all the books. And yeah, just go and read it if you haven't, but of course I was late to this trend because everyone already loves his books. And so I'm just here telling you now that I understand and I'm in love with these characters. So another book, my top 5, and that I've already mentioned a lot this year, was a Sophie Kinsella novel. Now, there was a book launched this year that I bought and I read and I really enjoyed, which was Surprise Me. But I did feel that it was less comedy than I was expecting. I love that. I gave it 4 or 5 stars, but this one actually I gave 5 out of 5 stars. I still mention it. I still want to reread it all the time. I mean, all of her books, but this one I just keep mentioning to people, like, read her novels, like read this one or read I've Got Your Number. And this one was My Not So Perfect Life by Sophie Kinsella. This is one of her most, you know, up-to-date books, so I've been reading a lot of her older work, but because this was fairly recent when I read it, there's mentions of Instagram and social media, and so it reads very contemporary. It takes place in London in the beginning, which I love. I've lived in the city. I understand, like, this dream that this main character has of living in the city and being cool and everything. And then something happens, you know, chaos ensues as usual, and she ends up in the Somerset, so in the rural area, and she goes back home. It's so opposite to her dream. And why does she dream of going to London so bad? Because, you know, when she goes back to Somerset, we kind of read about it, and it's kind of lovely there. It's a touching and moving book. It's beautiful, but it's also very, very funny, because this character, Katie, just, you know, just chaos happens to her, which happens to a lot of Sophie Kinsella's protagonists. I love this book. I think it's very insightful and smart, but also very, very funny and very cute. The romance is so well done, so cute. I love this book, and I will read it soon. So yeah, go read Sophie Kinsella. But now I'm going to talk about my favorite book of the year. It was a surprise to me. I thought it was gonna be, you know, a contemporary read. It wasn't gonna be fun. It wasn't gonna be good. It was gonna be touching, and that would be fine. But it was also deep and sad and moving and dramatic, but funny about the trauma. And I've been recommending it to so many people. This book is amazing. This character is so unlikable, and yet you root for her, and that's magic, because I root for Sophie Kinsella's characters and they have flaws, but I like them. They are funny, or they are smart, or they are, you know, they have ambition, but they're also good people at heart. But this character, like, a lot of the time, like halfway, you are deep into the book and you still cannot relate to her. Sometimes you just want to bang her in the head because she says very annoying things, sometimes even sexist things, and you still root for her because you know that this is coming from a very traumatic past and something doesn't add up, and there's a lot of mystery as well, which was something I've learned to love. It's so good, and it's the winner of the Costa Book Awards in 2017, and it's Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine by Gail Honeyman. All the hype I heard on BookTube about this book was totally justified, because not only is it really good to read and it reads really easily and it's well written and really thought through and funny and the romance element is there, but it does not take central place, but it's also, it stays with you so much. I would walk around when I was not reading it thinking about this character, you know, wondering what the hell happened to her for her to be like this. Also, being set in Glasgow is amazing because I've actually been there, and so it was so good to revisit. Some moments are so funny, and then some moments are so sad, and some moments that are so haunting, and some moments are just, and then in the end it's just so, yes, I love this book. Go read Eleanor Oliphant, it's completely fine. I've heard that the rights for this book to be turned into a movie have been bought by none other than, you know, the producing company that Reese Witherspoon owns, which is a very good omen because she respects this material and she loves women-led stories. Please go read Eleanor Oliphant, it's completely fine. Read it, buy it for your friends. It's so good. And yes, this book, yes, it's so good. I have no more books to talk to you about. I haven't read many books. Actually, my reading challenge says I read 22 books this year. I went through a lot of reading slumps, a lot of times when I didn't have the drive to read or the impulse to read. I just wasn't in the mindset to read. During classes has been really hard to read. That being said, I'm still planning on reading a lot next year, of course, but I will try to be, I don't know, because my reading goal is not very high, it's 30 books a year. I don't think I have to lower it and be more realistic. I think I have to be more proactive about it. That being said, I also discovered podcasts this month, so all of my time commuting has been given to podcasts because I am loving some really good podcasts. And I would love to talk to you about that if you ever are so interested in hearing about them. That being said, that's all from me today, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. What were your top 5 books this year? Or did you love any of these books this year as much as I did? I would love to hear about it in the comments down below. So if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up or subscribe. And I hope to see you soon with a new video soon. Goodbye!